Hey everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you caught our last video, you have seen how we can refactor a simple language toggle feature into a custom hook using the context API. But today, we are taking things a little bit higher and we will dive into creating a custom React hook that simplifies handling CRUD operations with a REST API, which means it will help us to create, fetch, update and delete any item we have in our UI. So let's get started. So first, why custom hooks? Custom hooks in React allow us to extract component logic into reusable functions. Simple as that. So in today's hook, we will encapsulate all the network request logic and making our components cleaner and more maintainable. So let's look at our demo. Our purpose of the demo today is first, let's have a list of posts and we'll use a public API within JSON placeholder to help us manipulate all these APIs. Okay, so it gives us options to fetch a list of APIs, and also it gives us an option to create one and updating one and also deleting one. Just keep in mind these APIs are public and they're just for mocking the calls. When you do an update on delete, it doesn't give us back actually that item added in the whole fetch API. So we are not really updating any backend service here, okay? We're just mocking the calls so we can test our hooks that being working as expected. So we'll be using the post API from JSON placeholder. And first things first, of course, we need to render first time a list from a backend. So I will go and create a hook. I will go to my hooks folder and I'll create a new file called useAPI.js. And remember, when you are creating a hook, always you start with the use keyword. Okay, enter. So the first thing we said is that we try to fetch our data. So when we fetch our data, in our mind means we fetch a data and store it somewhere. So we need a state and a state to store the data. And also when you have API calls, you have a couple more states you add, the loading state and the error state as well. And the other thing is that when you fetch this data, you fetch it first time when you land on this component, right? So this call will be triggered when the component renders for the first time, which means we need also the use effect hook. Okay, so I'll start by importing these. Import use state and use effect from React. Okay, now I will use also Axios to help me fetching the data. So I'll import Axios from Axios. I already installed in my dependencies. And now let's create my function or my hook. Okay, so function use API, and it will expect a URL string. Okay, so I can use this one anywhere in my application for any API I want to call. And now let's create my state, which will hold my data, my loading, and my error state. So const data. And I need a setter function that will help me set the state and use state, and I'll set it by default to an empty array for now. Then next state is loading, and I need a setter function for it as well to help me set it, and use state. And in the beginning I'll set it as true because I know this will trigger the first time my component renders to trigger the API. So the first time to be always true, and I need an error, no error. Okay, so my state is now created. Now I need to fetch my data or get my API triggered and called. So I need to use effect. And use effect, again, if you compare it to the functional component, it's just like a life cycle of your component. So in class component, you used to have component will mount, component did mount, component did update, and so on. In functional components or hooks, you don't have these life cycles anymore. You just have use effect, And use effect play all that role depending on the second parameter, which is called dependencies array. Okay, so depending on this dependencies array, it can handle all those life cycles for you. So I'm passing an empty array, which means that this will run only first time when my component renders. Okay, so like on the load, if you want to say, if you come just from plain JavaScript applications. Now, use effects, we said we want to trigger the API call from here, and it needs to be an async call. So use effect does not, unfortunately, handle async calls by itself, but there is a workaround, and the workaround is that I will declare a function inside, and again, this function can be also declared outside. Okay, it just depends on what you need. If you declare it outside, maybe because you need it somewhere else, you need to export it and make it available to other places. Otherwise, it's okay to declare it inside your use effect. Okay, async. So this function will be asynchronous, and when this function triggered, the first thing I want to do is set loading to true, which actually I already did by default, so I don't need this lane anymore. That's one lane down. Try catch block. So if there's any error, I can catch it. Now here, I will trigger my API. So const response, okay, await axios dot, so we're fetching get, and then the URL that you're passing as parameter here. Okay, now when I get my response, I want to set my response in this data so I can access it. Okay, so I'll use the set data function to help me do that. Set data, and to be response dot data. Okay, and when this is done or finished, of course, I want to set my loading to false. I'm not loading anymore. Now, let's say if an error happens. So if error happens, I want to set my error function, my error state, sorry, and so that error. So I'll say set error to error, and again, of course, set my loading to false when that one is completed. Okay, now I declared my function. Now I need to trigger my function. So I'll just come down, sit inside my use effect, and oops, I'll just trigger that function, fetch data, and that should do now for us. Okay, now you remember when I said here in the array dependencies, if you keep it empty, that will render first time, which is correct. Only thing now here for us is that this is not a normal functional component, it is a hook, a custom hook we are building. So this hook, we can call it anytime we want, okay, not only when the component re-renders. So basically I need to add a dependency, and dependency will be is the URL. So I want this one to be triggered every time I have my URL changing. So I'll just go and add the URL. So this one will not trigger anymore the first time component re-renders. Okay, now what I did is I created my states. Okay, I fetched my API, I made sure I'm updating my states. Now I need this data, loading and error to be available for me anytime I want from other places. Okay, so I'll come after my use effect function, I'll say return, and I'll return my data, I'll return also my loading, I need all of them, and the error state. Oops, loading. And then we just go and export our hook. Export default use API. Save. Now let's go back to our component, and we have the main step page which holds all our application, and let's import the hook we created. Import. So now let's go inside our functional component where we can use our new custom hook, and I'm so excited to see this working. Let's get started. So const, and what we'll try to do is that we'll try to access our data for now. I will say const data, then equal use API, which is the custom hook you built. And then if you remember, it's expecting a URL. So I will go back to the JSON placeholder and I'll just copy this endpoint from here and I'll copy it and paste it there. Okay, now let's console log our data and see if that's working. Go back to my application. See, I can already see things are coming in my console. All the list is coming here. Now let's try passing this down to our list item. So before here I just passed an empty array. Now I pass data. Save. Oh, there we go. So this is my list. So what I have done, I just created behind the scene a list of items. Okay, so this is the list item, and then that's what's going item component. And the item component, it's just a little bit styled, so it's really easy for us to look at and use it for our demo. So what it does is just display the title, display the body, and then we just have two buttons that will help us later to trigger our update calls and delete calls as well. Easy as that. So now let me go back to our main page. So this is the data. Now I want to also access the loading and the error as well. So say loading, error, and I'll just come right here. So I'll say if it is loading, then return for me, for example, anything you want to do. I don't know if you maybe you want to do navigation, you want to display spinner. So for now I'm just doing this, which is not really good idea. I have to build a separate component for it, but just for sake of this demo I'm just doing that. Okay, now let me hard reload, and you can see quickly that spinner went, because this API is so fast, you may just see it like quickly showing on the screen and then disappearing. Okay, so that's loading state is there. Now let's say if error happened, then I'll just keep it simple. I'll just say I'll display just the error message I'm getting basically for now. Okay, so that's it. So that's loading, that's our error, that's fetching call is getting done. Now let's create another call that will help us to create a new post. So I'll come here under my use effect. I'll create a new function called create item, and I'll wrap it with a use callback function. So it will help me to memorize the function. And this one, it will be an async call and expecting, of course, your new data because we're creating a new item. Let's create a new item and let's see what we have to do. So we set our loading to true, and then we have our try catch block, and then inside our try will trigger our API call. So await Axios, and this time we have post because we're creating, and then that post will expect a URL and also a new item. I created my item and posted to my backend. I need to fetch the new list of my posts. Okay, so it contains the new item for me. So to do so, I need to access the fetch data, and now you see, because I need it, I need to take it out of my use effect so I can access it, and I can come right here and say await fetch data. And then if my error happens, I want to catch it as well. So I'll say set error to my error, and of course set my loading to false. Okay, and you can see here in my happy path, I didn't add a set loading because the fetch data API already is taking care of that for me. Okay, now let's come back to our create item. So we use the use callback, and I want this one to rerun only when the URL changes. Now we are done with creating our function. We need to make it available within our custom hook. So I'll go to return function, I'll add it right there. Now let's go back to our form component, which is right here, and let's import our hook. So use API from API hook. So now what we have to do is that we need, when we click add item button, which we have here, okay, we will have a function called handle submit. So that one is getting triggered from here on the form on submit functionality. So all what we're doing now is when we submit, we're just setting the state, okay? So we can see that one typing right there, right? But what I want to do is that when I click submit, I want to trigger my API call. So that's where I'll use my use API. So I'll come back inside my functional component and I will try to access my create item function, use API, and we'll pass the URL again. So I'll just copy this URL. Okay, so all what we did is that we're just trying to access this function here. Okay, now if you go to the JSON placeholder, if you want to do a creation, it's expecting a title, a body, and user ID as well. Our form currently only have one field, which you can set title, but what I will do, I'll just hard code actually everything at the moment, because the purpose of this demo not building forms, but just to see how we can create custom hooks to handle the API calls for us. So I'll call the create item. When all is done, I'll just call create item. Then I'll pass it the updated object. Okay, so usually here it will something read from your state, like name, it's my title, for example. I'll just do that. Okay, it should not be this, just like that. But body I don't have in any field, so I'm just hard coding it now. Okay, just another content. And the user ID, usually you'll use something generic creation of your IDs using a third party. So now what we have done is we created our custom hook, which have a function that helps us create item. We import this one within our functional component and we are trying to trigger it. So let's save this and see if this is working. What I will do, I'll go to my network, because if you remember, when we update, okay, the resource will not really be updating on the server, it will just fake it for you. Okay, so we can see the calls going through. So when I click add item, I'm expecting to see two calls. The first one is the post call, okay, and the second one which gives me back the updated list items. Now let's add another test title, for example, and just click this button and you can see I can see calls getting triggered. Okay, my first one is post for creation and that's the payload I sent. Okay, and this is the response I'm getting back, so it sent me back exactly the same response I sent. Okay, only with an extra ID, which is great. Now the second call we can see here in the network tab is the list of all my items. So if you have a real RESTful API really working, then you'll see your new item in this list as well, and then you see it popping up there. So first one, the creation of new item is working. Let's move to the next one, which is update. And the update, again, same thing, because in real time, if I click update, I need to see a field where I can update these values. I will not do that because that's an extra work, which is not the purpose of this demo. But I will mock again whatever that response I need to send. So all what I want to do is just show you how you can create your hook that can help you update it. Okay, now let's go back here and create another function within our hook. We'll call it update item, and also I'll wrap it within a use callback function, I think, and that will expect your item ID and updated item, because you're updating, right? So you want the updated values. Now same thing almost within creation. Okay, we need first, when we trigger any call, we need to set loading to true. Okay, then you have your try catch block. And then here what we have to do, first we have to trigger API to update. So it will be the URL, which is from here, okay? And then you need the ID, which should come from the function, because you're updating one item. And then you need the updated values, okay? That will be the second parameter. And then when that's updated in the backend, again, same thing we did before, we need to fetch the new data from the backend to get the updated list, okay? Now in the catch block, same thing, I want to handle the error scenario as well. So I'll set my error to error and set my loading to false, okay? And I'll come here again, the use callback will have a dependency of URL, so whenever it changes, rerun the code. Oops, save. And let's make this one available for me, same as we did create item. So copy, I'll go to my return and add my new function right there, okay? Now what we'll do, these buttons are within the list item, and list item have item components. I'll go there. So what I will do in the handle update, that's what I'll try to access it. So first I need to import my custom hook, use API, and then I need to make that function also available for me. So update item, so whatever we named it there, we have to import it here, equal use API, and then we pass the URL. So the URL, again, it is the same thing, so just paste this one there, and then we can come inside our update function. And what we'll say, whenever we update, we click the update button, saying that maybe you already have a form show up and everything, and you have your new values. I'll just say update item, and we said it's expecting two parameters. The first one is the ID, then updated value. So the updated value, I'll just again mark it for now, and I will go to my item. So I have first item.id, so this item.id, that's the first one, then the updated value, okay? So user ID, and this ID will be, of course, the item.id, and title I'm hard coding it, and the body I'm hard coding it. Save, and let's go and see if this really works. So click, clear everything, and then go down, and let's click one of update buttons. Click, and there we go. So I can see here 22. That's the ID of your item, and you can see we did a put call to post, but for the item with ID 22. Okay, and this is the payload we sent, and we are getting a response back, which is successful. Okay, and now it's all done. We are just retrieving the recent list of my items. Again, if it's a real-time application, you'll see your updated item there as well, which should run also and run in your UI. Okay, so that is the second part. Now the third part is the deletion, okay, which is also quite simple. So we'll create again another function. I hope this time you're able to create it by yourself. Maybe pause the video, go try to do it by yourself, and then come back and see the solution. Const delete item, and we will also use callback here, and async, and to expect an item ID. So we need an ID of the item to know which item we're going to delete. And I want this use callback to rerun when the URL have changed. Okay, now again set loading to true, and we have try catch block. Okay, so inside the try, we will just trigger again the API call. So await axios dot delete. Okay, and again same thing, the URL that you have slash the ID of the item. Okay, so the item ID. Okay, then I want to fetch again the recent let's fetch data. And if error happens, again same thing we did before, set error and set the loading for me. And then when I'm done with my function, I want to make it available for me within my custom hook to other components. Now I'll go back to my item and we need to expose the new function again. And then what we will go in the delete handle update, then we have handle delete, and handle delete get triggered when you click the button deletion. So I'll go right inside there, easy as that, and I'll just trigger my function from the hook, and I'll just pass the item.id. Easy. Now let's hard refresh and let's clean up everything, and let's just keep going down and click any of these buttons. I'll click this one. You can see here again 55 and see delete for the post ID 55. The preview, of course, we didn't send anything and we don't get anything back because we're deleting the item. Okay, and again in real time, this post, when you get it back, it will have one item less than before. Okay, so I hope this really makes sense and it's easy for you. This hook, even it can be more, customized as you need for each project. You can refactor also for more things, but this is like the perfect start for you, like a perfect shell you can start with, and it can make your life really much easier within your applications. And that's it. You have just created a powerful custom hook that handles all the CRUD operations for any REST API. This approach not only keeps your code base clean, but also helps you in reusing the code across different projects without reinventing the wheels every time. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to stay updated on more awesome content like this one. Drop a comment below if you have any questions, or share what you would like to see next. And happy coding!